Okay, today I'm going to discourse a little bit about free will. Now, when I look at the historical evidence, I find that whenever the conception of free will is or the idea of human potentiality is sort of boundless or unlimited, obviously within the scopes of natural law, etc., we have a phenomena in which there is an abundance of cultural flourishing, such as in Florence, Italy, or Elizabethan England, or, choose your culture, as far as this idea. Like, think about, okay, a man by the name of Giovanni Pico della Mirandola wrote a book called Oration on the Dignity of Man in the 1400s. Now, this was essentially the manifesto of the Renaissance period. He essentially said, I'll give one of my favorite quotes, paraphrased obviously, because my mind is not so well as to give a direct verbatim exposition of what he said. But essentially, in a nutshell, he says that God said to Adam upon his creation, "We have given you, Adam, the choice to either ascend to the level of the angels with your boundless potential, or to be worse than any beast with your boundless potential. You can either be a monster or you can be a saint. You can be whatever you choose to be." And the idea that you can be whatever you choose to be is something that's become sort of a platitude to some people, although it's rarely believed because people have their own, self-imposed limitations, or they believe in this sort of scientific determinism that all things are sort of relegated to sociobiological principles. And I think this is an insidious manifestation in the current intellectual discourse, because sociobiology and evolutionary psychology pretend to explain why human beings behave in the way that they do. It uses a lot of generalities, obviously. And of course it has to, because human beings are much more variegated than it is willing to really admit. Or if it does admit it, it's like, oh, this is an aberration, etc., etc. But what's the old phrase? The exceptions do not negate the rule, right? But when we look at things that are said to be uniform by sociobiology, such as beauty, right? Our idea, our perception of beauty, we find that culture to culture, aesthetic values are very different. Whether it's artistically speaking or whether it's physical attraction is concerned, different historical periods and different cultures have different ideas of beauty. Different values are placed on different aspects of human life. When you look at something like the Renaissance, of course, you have this idea that human beings have this boundless potential. And so what you get is a Leonardo da Vinci, you get Michelangelo, you get Mirandola, you get Battista, you get Raphael, you get, in the English Renaissance, obviously, you get your Shakespeares, you get your Johnsons, you get your Francis Bacons. When you take, for instance, another culture, very different, say classical Chinese culture, you have this idea of proper place, you have your ideas, the Confucian ideas that, hey, look, this is the dogma that everyone must stick to, and creativity is stifled, progress is stifled. That's why you see, as brilliant as the Chinese are, you don't see, historically speaking, the same kind of cultural changes and growth and diversity that you got with European culture. And that is because the ideas that were believed and the concepts that were followed um, the idea of, I guess you could call it collectivism versus individuality, right? In the West, starting with the ancient Greeks, you had the idea of individual liberty, democracy, etc., etc., and so you get a very different reality. And nowadays, I think I've mostly touched on the point of the insidiousness of sociobiology and evolutionary psychology. But the point isn't that it's insidious in the sense that it gives people a bad idea of human nature, or the origin of our psychological apparatus. The point is that it gives a falsified and simplistic picture of humanity, of what it means to be human, of what human beings are capable of, etc. It tries to fit everything within a framework that ultimately is distorted. It's as if the natural landscape has been sort of cut and cropped into an irregular pattern. And the image that comes to mind, for instance, is, say, landscaping, where you have these, pyramid-like, or looks like Mayan pyramids. The trees have been cut in that sort of shape rather than their natural contours and everything else. So, yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add to this, but if you have any ideas, or if you disagree with me or agree with me or whatever else, I look forward to seeing what other people can come up with, or what other people, conceive of regarding the subject matter. I did not really, I guess I didn't really elaborate especially upon every idea that I've had regarding this, or maybe not in the most coherent fashion, but I think I got a point across the major points. I can be a little bit more analytical with it if it's necessary, but yeah, that's pretty much it.